Why is it that cost of living in LA and other big cities are getting so expensive, and also colleges are getting so expensive?
I don't know if there's like a single question. Like, I don't know if I can totally answer that question because I'm like,
Because it's getting intense.
yeah. I mean, we've seen the cost of education skyrocket for like the last 20 years.
Yeah. It's
Like,
crazy.
yeah. And, the public university was meant to be an accessible thing for like middle class and lower, families to be able to access. And it's really hard to access without taking out huge amounts
Yeah.
of loans. Some of it is like that same dynamic of, like elements of it that have gotten privatized, like, a lot of like hired, like top level, like when you look at the budgets in terms of like what's being paid at the top versus like when you get down to like the lower levels.
Meaning top levels of
Administration. Like even in like some recent audits, and it was like, oh, like why are the kind of like the office of the presidents versus like, the janitors, like the kind of, there's like the same kind of the same kind of corporate structure where you see this like massive ratio. I'm sure there's much more in terms of like education costs, but it's kind of like, let's invest back. And I think there's been kind of more disinvestment. Like states used to really be able to put more money into the university, and we do pretty well, like where there's been more lately to like keep from fees, but then you end up having to subsidize with either corporate money or families paying more. So I think like a mix of that. And then the housing costs, like, I mean, in LA, like a lot of it is when you have, housing shortage. So we've had a very, like many decades of not building enough housing. We have like a growing homeless population right now,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, you walk out and you see it. And also like a lot of new industry coming in that's bringing in higher income folks, which are, pulling, like similar to what San Francisco experienced. Some of it being tech companies that are raising the prices, and a lot of folks are getting priced out. We did a report on Black workers, and like we found that they're moving to the Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside, because you can't afford LA County anymore.
why is it? Again, kind of that specific group.
For them, there was other like factors. It's also an issue of not having access to jobs, not having access to good jobs.
For what reason?
For a range of reasons, there was like a very thriving middle class Black community in LA, and you would see it in South LA because that's a lot of where the housing was available. And this was kind of going back into like the 50s and the 60s, and this like booming manufacturing, defense like world. And so the deindustrialization kind of pushed a lot of those jobs out of the area, and kind of different levels of disinvestment, like Black workers have some of the highest union rates, so
Really? Black workers within unions, unions charge Black workers more.
No, meaning rates of participation. So they are more likely to participate in a union than other workers. So they had high participation in unions.
And that's since fallen off.
No, that's still the case, but unions are weakened, so that power is weakened. So like a lot of like when this process, so there's multiple things. Like if we look in LA, so the jobs left, and then a lot of times like the jobs that remained, that were union jobs, suddenly got deunionized. Like this process of like, let's create counter companies that would then have the same job but not from a union, and pretty soon the union kind of job goes away and Black workers are kind of taken out of the work, like immigrant kind of more like you bring in another workforce that you can exploit and pay less. A lot of times the narrative is like, oh, immigrants took away American jobs or Black jobs, but if you actually look at it as a structural thing where it's like the jobs went down in in quality and in pay and in conditions, and then you found a workforce that would take it. Like, that's actually how
so that
process
happened first?
That happened, yeah.
They
like,
lowered
so
the
you can see
conditions,
that.
and then American workers just wouldn't take them, and so they started.
So you fill it with folks who will
immigrants.
work for minimum wage or less. And so, like, you would see that. So there was that. And then, I mean, we all know, like, the 3 strikes policy and kind of, like the kind of incarceration that happened that was very targeted to the Black community, which disempowers you in multiple ways.
What was the 3 strike?
There was a law, so as like kind of the criminal justice system like strengthened in the state, one of it was that if you get 3 strikes, like anything, like 3 minor offenses, you could go for a maximum term. And so like a lot of folks, and a lot of folks who went through like really minor drug charges would end up in the system for very long periods. So things like that, like the criminal justice system, which also disproportionately affected the Black community. So kind of like all these kind of different systems, like kind of push them out of the workforce. And so, we work with this organization called the Black Worker Center, and they're like, LA has a Black job crisis in terms of ensuring that workers are given access, are able, like let's think about, who we're bringing into the work, making sure that we're investing in the education, thinking about public sector jobs, so government jobs that are usually better paying and have benefits. Who are we bringing into them, and kind of different forms of affirmative action, which is illegal in this state.
Oh,
but
it's illegal in California?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we had we're one of we had Prop 209 that doesn't allow for race-based decision making. But there's still ways where you can support like the community. So things like that, like why Black workers in LA specifically have experienced struggles around work and being able to stay in LA. And if you drive around LA, I mean South LA, for one, it's an area that's getting very gentrified. So there's other kind of conditions where the demographics are changing. But folks we talked to, it was like they're leaving, because you can't afford to stay here.
I wonder if anyone, I don't know if maybe you guys do, or if anyone talks to these groups of people that are having a hard time finding work about online opportunities, online education. That's something that I've taken advantage of, and I wish I knew about when I was, younger. I feel like the online education space is getting so good, and it's so cheap. And they're amazing skills. I mean, a lot of them are skills in technology, which is one of the most in-demand industries right now. And it's open to pretty much anyone. And I've wondered if anyone's really pushing that, because there's really no threshold. You don't have to have a degree. Honestly, anything. You literally just sign up for like these $10 classes.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, thinking, like we almost kind of think of it as like a workforce development. Like what can we do to like put people in pipelines, whether it's online classes or other kinds of trainings that will give people certificates and skills. Yeah. But to me, it's like it's getting the time and resources to folks. And again, if you're thinking about that person that's working 2 jobs, and has a family, like it's even hard in that kind of space to think about, okay, I'm going to take an online class. But like we have this union partner who does on the job training. Like they work with janitors who work night shifts, and they will work with the company, and they will train them up on how to create green buildings. And so they'll train the janitors, they'll work with the company and the staff, like to make sure that, you're thinking about things like water conservation and energy efficiency and things like that. And they're getting a certificate program out of that. And that's something that they're trying to expand in the state. So that can be like even just in the field itself, like where you start upskilling your work so that you can that can be like a project with the employer, with the workers, that, you know, that's done in a way that works with the conditions of, you know, what they have access to. I think the thing that I was talking about, like, if you're going to replace drivers with automated vehicles, let's have a learning program in place that's fully funded that will allow those drivers into other fields. Or, you know, like I was talking, I actually drove around in an automated car.
Oh, you did? What was that like?
I mean, it was interesting. Like, it was just like it was at a conference and they just drove us around. I drove in a bus too, but they just went around a parking lot. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, the technology is there. And, you know, he was like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, I work in labor. And he's like, oh, you must be really worried about this thing. And I was like, you know, what I'm actually thinking about is what new work is going to come out of this. And he's like, you know, there's all these cameras all around. He's like, they can only be manually placed. He's like, we would need somebody for that. Like, that's, you know, like, there's probably, like, all this stuff around maintaining that car that's going to create, like, 3 new jobs. So I think that, like, if we could be thinking about that in advance, and again, like, thinking about it as, just a plan. Like, we're going to have the trainings in place that'll, you know, fit people right in so that they can, you know, get the new jobs and get the new skills.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, because my thoughts on the whole technology boom is kind of like, you know, it's been happening since the beginning of time. And that's kind of what I've thought is like, there's not really stopping it. So why not look at what other opportunities there are and start jumping on that as quickly as possible, instead of waiting until there's no other option. One other question I had about the universal basic income. Am I right in saying that by giving everyone, you know, a set amount of income, whatever it is, that would also take away from social programs? I meant to clarify that.
The idea is that would, at least it's like the versions that I've heard, is that you would replace social programs. So you would replace things like the earned income tax credit or food stamps or things like that, which the argument for that is that it would actually cost the same to just give everybody money. Not the actual budget amount, but that kind of like the structure of giving everybody money versus trying to like allocate and differentiate and things like that the administration is actually, it makes a lot more sense to just do something like a UBI.
How much would that raise taxes?
Yeah, so I think that's why it's not. I mean, I don't know that I think I was reading something recently where it was like, oh, to do that in this country for every single person would be like our budget right now.
What would mean our budget?
Like the U.S. budget right now, like that would be it.
Oh wow!
But like if you say you did it only to those with, you know, who are on the social benefits, like that supposedly is the one that would even out. Like if you took everybody off food stamps and like our different programs and just put them on UBIs, like a benefit, that would even out.
So a universal basic income, but only for those who are already taking advantage of
at least in terms of the numbers. But if you wanted to do it, and I think the way the idea is built is that it's everybody.
Right.
And so that would probably take a lot more thinking in terms of how something like that would get funded.
What do you think that would do for incentivizing people to work?
Because it's not enough to live off of. Like, because I read this article the other day and I was like, what would I do with $1,000 a month? And I was like, you know, I think I would work 4 days a week.
Instead of 5?
Yeah. Like, I would work less and I would, you know, I write fiction on the side and I would use that extra day to write more. You know, and I'm like, I'll totally take that. And I want to, like, what would you do with an extra $1,000 a month?
Nothing. I'd quit my job and just live off $1,000 a month.
I mean, I thought about that too. I was like, it wouldn't be in LA.
Yeah, no, you could not do it in LA.
I mean, I'm one of those rare like jobs where I have a pension. And I always kind of look at it and I was like, okay, when could I retire and where
Yeah.
could I live, for that?
It's so funny. I don't even have that thought in my mind. I think because I do work for myself, I've never had that thought of like my pension, or I mean, I do plan to retire, but I obviously have to go through like my own avenues and strategies for that. But yeah, it's an interesting like kind of conversation when I talk to people who have that. It's just an interesting, I don't know if it's a,
Yeah.
what it is,
I
but-
didn't have it until this job, and I didn't know I missed it until I had it.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, God. Well, that's the thing. It's like a salary, and this is like very normal stuff that a lot of people have. But to me, it's like, it seems like such a luxury to me. But, you know, I create my own schedule and, work as hard or not as hard as I want. So like we were just talking about, it's a balance. It's back and forth. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the episode. If you're interested in contributing to the conversation and supporting the show, there's 2 easy things you can do. 1, click subscribe, and 2, visit our Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the Exploring Minds community.